Hey everybody, Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala here. If you've clicked on this video, you may or may not have already heard the news that Atari has acquired the Intellivision brand and original library. This is brand new information, came out as of recording probably about an hour or two ago. So Intellivision Entertainment is going to be rebranding and will continue, they say continue distribution of the Amico console. There's never been any distribution, but they will continue on doing what they're doing, just under a different brand. So it is no longer the Intellivision Amico, it's just the Amico. This is incredibly interesting news. And something that I actually talked about on our first Retro Bliss podcast last year. We were talking about Atari and all their acquisitions. And I talked about Atari as potentially trying to take on the role of the guardian of the pre-NES retro video game scene. That's one thing, is that Atari is positioning itself that with a few more acquisitions, I don't know if they make them or not, they could really be the guardians of pre-NES gaming. You know, something like the Odyssey 2, I mentioned this in my video as well. Odyssey 2, almost all the North American games are owned by the guy who programmed them, Ed Everett. But there's one game, and it's the most famous Odyssey 2 game, that can never be released, or at least he can't release it, because of a lawsuit that Atari made back in the 80s, and that's Casey Munchkin. So I know for a fact that there was talks with Evercade, oh, we're going to do an Odyssey 2 collection. Oh, we can't have Casey Munchkin? Okay, we're not going to do it. But all those licenses owned by one guy, if Atari bought that, they could release they could release Casey Munchkin. So they could position themselves there like the guardians of the Odyssey 2. Some acquisitions, they could be the guardian of the ColecoVision. Intellivision, who knows, in a year or two, they could be a complete fire sale. They could buy all that for almost nothing. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
And I did talk about how probably about a year from now, or at some point, Intellivision would be looking to fire sale their properties. As we know, last year, they sold Astro Smash and Shark Shark to BBG, so I'm presuming that this isn't part of that deal. But yeah, they've been trying to obviously get money with what they've got, and selling that Intellivision brand and the original game library that Intellivision owns. Honestly, a lot of the best games on the original Atari, Intellivision doesn't even own. There were third-party games, or third-party licenses and IPs at least. But yeah, Wade Rosen, the CEO of Atari, has said this was a very rare opportunity to unite former competitors and bring together fans of the golden age of gaming. So what does this mean for Intellivision? Intellivision's obviously a system that I and a lot of my viewers are very into. We love the Intellivision. I personally don't have the nostalgia for it because I never had one when I was a kid, but a lot of my viewers do. I think it is an awesome homebrew scene. That's how I fell in love with the Intellivision. There's some fantastic stuff being done for it nowadays. But yeah, I like this news. Not because I absolutely love this iteration of Atari. This iteration of Atari does have a lot of issues, particularly on getting stuff to customers on time, producing stuff that is properly, has gone through a proper QA process. As we all know, the Atari 2600 Plus had reverse difficulty switches and reverse buttons for 7800 mode that have not been officially fixed yet, and the patch that is available, you have to have a PC in order to do, and you have to get it through Atari Age. And obviously they've had some issues with some carts that they've put out. But the fact of the matter is, despite all that, they actually are producing stuff and delivering stuff. Whether that's done perfectly is a completely different conversation. But they have shown that they are good at actually producing products. So, I like this news. The Intellivision brand is now with a company that could potentially do something with it. Intellivision Entertainment had no money, and I mean, there's plenty of things you could do with that property. Obviously, you could create plug-and-plays. I'm not into plug-and-plays. I have all these games for my original console. You could create something like an Intellivision Plus, similar to the Atari 2600 Plus, where you plug in an Intellivision cartridge, it's got a ROM dumper, and you can play your carts with HD output. That would be really nice to have, but remember, most modern homebrews are created with JLP boards. And JLP boards have built into them ROM dumping preventative measures. So something like the 2600 Plus, my assumption is that it would not work with the majority of the best Intellivision homebrews. That is part of why I've always wanted like an FPGA solution. Atari's not going to make an FPGA solution. I can pretty much guarantee that. And the big problem with somebody else making an FPGA solution is that the Intellivision actually has several proprietary software files that are required to be on the system. So you're not just reproducing hardware and you can get away with it. You have to have the GROM file, you have to have the exec file. If you want ECS games, you have to have the ECS file. So interesting times ahead. I am glad it's out of the hands of Intellivision Entertainment. I think OG Intellivision fans are going to be really happy to have the Intellivision brand kind of removed from the Amico debacle. It'll be interesting to see what Intellivision Entertainment rebrands itself as. That was kind of what they were banking on, is nostalgia for the Intellivision to sell their products and all that, and now they don't even have that. So all they have is an app that they need to change all the branding on. Yeah, so really, really interesting news. Big news for all the Amico people, obviously. Big news for us Intellivision fans. It'll be really interesting to see what Atari actually ends up doing with this property. And it'll be interesting to see what Atari does moving ahead. Like I mentioned last year. And I may have already put a clip from that podcast in of me talking about it. Do they now try to go for the ColecoVision IPs and brand? Do they try to acquire the Odyssey 2 stuff? The Magnavox Odyssey 2, that almost the entire North American library is owned by one person, that is Ed Averitt. They could probably get that for a really good deal. And then they would have the Atari stuff, obviously, the Intellivision, Odyssey 2, maybe ColecoVision. All you're really left with is Vectrex. Obviously, you'll probably start seeing Intellivision games on the VCS. My VCS isn't working. It never really worked. Pretty frustrated with my VCS, actually. But for those of you who have a functional VCS, I'm sure those games will come to that soon. Yeah, really interesting news. I would like to think that the ridicule that the brief and tumultuous Tommy Tallarico ownership of the Intellivision brand brought, I would like to think that we'd move past that. I doubt we will. I think that's always going to be tied to the Intellivision brand and kind of just be a dark chapter of it. It'll be interesting to see what Intellivision Entertainment does. I mean, they're already behind on their roadmap that they put out earlier this year. They've never really delivered anything except for the Intellivision Home or Amico Home app and a few games, and the stuff that was kind of finished and put out is mostly BBG. So the Astro Smash, the Dyna Blaster, the Shark. So yeah, that's kind of just my initial thoughts having seen that this morning. I'm probably going to end up talking more about this. We'll probably talk about it at some point on the Retro Bliss Rewind podcast, which is every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Interesting times. So I figured I'd just put that news out, give my real initial thoughts, and yeah, comment below what you think this means, what you think that maybe could be coming ahead. Yeah. It's not surprising, but at the same time, it's kind of this next chapter for Intellivision. We've been stuck in this last chapter for a long time, and it's not been a good chapter. So my view of it is things can only go up from here. So we will talk more about it in the future. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Mike's Gaming Gala.